Hey family, this is Verona from Ancestral Voices. Today I'm going to do a video that is addressing the current coronavirus situation through the lens of the seven Hermetic Principles, which originate from Tahuti, aka Toph, from ancient Egypt. And I'll be looking at these, not all of the principles, but I'll be looking at some of the principles and how this African sacred science can be used to help navigate us through this time. So, the first principle I'm going to be looking at is the principle of mentalism, which is the mind is all and all is the mind. Therefore, our minds are very powerful. What we think about, what we allow into our psyche, has the ability to impact our external reality. And I would say that one of the reasons why we're currently experiencing what we are is because humanity in general has now started to think differently. We no longer collectively buy into our governments, our systems, our politicians. There's an aspect of doubt or lack of belief. And through things such as the internet, there's a lot more alternative news information. So before, when you just had news streams, for example, everybody would be plugged into those news streams and they would download the information that was given to them through these sources. Whereas now people are accessing different types of information collectively as a whole. The fact that we are no longer buying into these systems, we no longer believe in them, they're losing their power. And because of that, we're experiencing a sort of complete shift. We're experiencing a collapse of society as we know it. And I would say that is a repercussion of when the collective mindset starts to think differently. And anyone who's studied any form of African spiritual thought would understand that the spiritual world and the physical world work in harmony with each other or in unison with each other, and they have a symbiotic relationship. So therefore, what happens in the sort of mental spiritual realm will have an impact on our physical. So that's where we have the Hermetic principle known as cause and effect. The cause in this case is a result of the collective mentalism changing. The effect is what is currently happening now, the breakdown of society. The breakdown is of the world as we know it. We have to be very mindful of what information we take into ourselves, because whatever information comes at us, we internalize it, we can believe it, we can manifest it. So if we buy into something enough, it can become our reality. So what I'm seeing at the moment are lots of people saying, I know what's behind this situation, is it down to, 5G? They're trying to put, the 5T towers are causing this problem. And people are saying that it's a means to create a vaccine so we can jab, or an ulterior motive to bring in martial law. Now, let me just clarify this point. I'm not saying these things are not true. I repeat, I'm not saying these things are not true. However, once again, using the principle of mentalism, we need to be very careful if we start to focus our attention on these areas, because the very same thing that we're trying to avoid, we could end up manifesting as our own reality. So I'm seeing quite a few people out there, condemning people, saying you're a conspiracy theorist and mocking them and stuff like that. And for me, I don't understand that, because you shouldn't knock anybody for having an alternative point of view, because we should be way beyond believing anything the mainstream media tells us. We should always be questioning information from any source. As you're listening to me now, I want you to question. I want you to go look these things up for yourself, because that's what you should do with all types of information. What I'm saying is, there is nothing wrong with educating yourself and exposing yourself to certain information. However, power of mentalism again, just be careful when that constantly becomes the narrative that you focus on. I wrote an article last year, And when the original question was posed online, people went crazy. People were triggered, like, how dare you? What are you saying? What do you mean? Of course, racism exists. And I know it exists. So, as I said, once again, you can know something exists. However, how much time and effort are you going to focus on this thing? Because the very same thing you're trying to get away from, if you're dwelling on it, you're embracing it, you're getting in conversations about it every day, seeing news headlines about it every day that are there to trigger you, to create an emotional response from you. And I'm saying when that happens, learn to take a step back and remove yourself from the situation. Choose not to engage. Not every conversation warrants your time or effort. So if anyone is interested in reading that article, you can go on our website, ancestralvoices.co.uk, and have a look. And the same issue that is addressed in the article is the same issue that's currently happening with the corona situation. So you can turn on your TV and you're bombarded with all these different stuff, and this person's died and this is happening, this is the reason. You know what I mean? So you don't need to put yourself under that. You can be aware of what's happening, but you can remove yourself from the situation. So, for example, the principle of vibration is when you create a sort of energetic response to a particular frequency. So, in this case, coronavirus, if we're there and we are giving our energy of fear, then because we're actually giving that emotional response to it, we can manifest it. So this is the same principle that is used for the law of attraction, is that they will tell you you need to think about what you want to manifest. People want to manifest a job, a house, whatever it is, and you have to think it and feel it and feel that it's real. That's the principle of vibration. So if you're watching the television and you are thinking, oh my goodness, oh, this is going to happen to me, I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to get kicked out of my house, then you've put an emotional attachment to it. Now you're starting to feel fear, you're feeling worried, and now you are drawing the very same thing that you say you don't want. So just to clarify, it is normal to feel fear. So it's nothing to feel guilty of. However, it's something that we should be mindful of being able to control. For example, if you look in African spiritual systems, if you go through any initiation process, initiation would normally involve some aspect of fear. And so by overcoming the fear, it's like you've mastered mental discipline. And I would say collectively right now, we are going through an initiation. And it's about being able to overcome the whole physical reality, overcome our physical senses, and master them. This is our time to step into self-mastery. Even though everything may look chaotic around us, we have to remember that once again, if we're looking at African spiritual thought, the ancestor Sobonfu Some from the Dagara of Burkina Faso speaks on this quite a bit. And she says that you choose your parents before you're born. So we're all born at a particular time. We've come here for a reason. We all came here to fulfill a purpose. The fact that we are born here at this time to witness such an event is not a coincidence. I think it's our time to release ourselves, to just have no emotional attachment to what's happening. And I know that sounds really cruel, but as I said, we are talking about spiritual principles that we can use to apply to this time. The more you emotionally attach yourselves to something, the more you're clinging on to it, the more it can impact you. And so to practice that sense of detachment or neutrality, I like to say neutrality because you are in a space of being neutral. You can view life as an observer. You can view what's going on around you without emotionally getting involved. And that level of self-discipline, I think, is going to be crucial through navigating through this period, because I think there's going to be a lot of things that you come into that can be very emotionally heavy. So, for example, someone like myself, I identify as an empath, which means that I'm very susceptible to people's energies. So, for example, I've heard some recent news from people and they're telling me their stories, And because I feel bad for them, it's almost like they've literally handed over whatever drama they're feeling, and then I embody it. So that's why I have to be really on my cleansing practices and developing myself so I don't end up carrying other people's emotional baggage for them. Because that happens, that's a very real thing. So, anyone like myself who does suffer from anxiety and all of these things, I've also got an article about that. So, go online, check our website. That one is called Spirituality and Anxiety. And I list quite a few of the things that I do to kind of keep myself grounded from other people's energies. And I think, particularly now, those who, whether you identify as empath or not, it's important to be able to spiritually cleanse yourself and protect yourself, because it's quite heavy what's going on at the moment. So now that we are being forced to slow down, we have no excuses. This is a time where we can literally tap into ourselves, reflect on the internal messages that we have inside. So for those of us who are already practicing ancestral reverence, we should be already aware that they communicate through dreams, your intuition, through the synchronicities in your life. And already, just in the time that this is happening, I can already see an increase in the messages I'm getting. So I would recommend to people taking notes, writing things down, the insights and the guidance that you're getting. I would say really start calling on your ancestors all the time, because you're going to need them to help you through this. Pouring libation every morning, waking up, lighting a candle, whatever you do in your own spiritual practice, cool. If you have access to a garden, go outside, connect with the earth, literally walk bare feet on the ground. So pour libation to the earth and say, guide me, allow me to connect with you during this time. Just really, embrace the moment. You can do some yoga in the garden or in the house. I would say keep active as well, because if we're going to be cooped up in the house, it's important that we keep our bodies moving. But it's not a negative time. There are a lot of changes that are being reflected in Mother Earth right now. So she is finally getting that chance to breathe. And anybody who's studying, whether it's African spiritual systems or any indigenous spiritual traditions, period, will know that nature is the for, nature is all, nature is everything. What we call God is manifested in the natural world. So the trees, the rivers, the lakes, the oceans, everything, the stones, all of these are manifestations of the all, including ourselves. So if you have any way to connect with any of those natural elements, then good, go for it. If you have a garden, fantastic. If you don't, and you don't have access to any sort of greenery whilst you're in your home, then, a pot plant or something, you can pour libation on that. You can call on your family members to come and help you, guide you through this time. This is a time to call on the natural forces and invite them into our lives, and tell them to guide us and show us what we need to do to help with this process, so we can align ourselves with nature. It's so important to align ourselves with the natural order of life. For a long time, we have been completely out of sync with nature. So if nature is now saying this is what has to happen, then we need to fall in line with it, plain and simple. It's so important at this time to develop your intuition. Hopefully people have been doing this work from before. Anyone who's been following Ancestral Voices, we've been on this for like 10 years. Build up your own intuition. Build up your relationship with your own ancestry. That's your own lineage. That's your power. That's your power source. They will communicate with you through your DNA. They're in you already. You can tap into that wisdom. You can tap into that guidance. And now more than ever, we have to be able to discern information, discern the facts from the fiction. And you have to be confident in your own internal wisdom. And I would say that this is a time where it's not about doubting yourself. Like, you really just have to believe in who you are and your own power. I think it's also important to say that what we may see as society collapsing, it may look like chaos and, trauma and drama. We can change our focus and attention to what kind of society would we like to have on the back of this? Anyone who is trying to advance themselves spiritually should really make themselves aware of these 7 Hermetic principles. You can check them out online, learn them, and see how they can apply to all aspects of your life. Once we start stepping into our own spiritual power and self mastery, we'll be amazed what we can achieve.